Welcome, everybody, to Next Stop, the Visit Luzerne County podcast, episode number 7. I'm Alan Stout, Executive Director here at the Visitors Bureau, and we have a really special guest this month. We were talking about having Mike Slusser from the City of Wilkes-Barre, special events coordinator for the City of Wilkes-Barre.
One of my titles, sure.
Yes, you have in licensing as well.
Right.
And so when we first launched this podcast a few months ago, I was telling Mike, before we start recording, we thought, well, let's come up with a list of people. And you were on that list right away. And when you tried to strategically time somebody to come in before an event, such as when we had Brian Benedetti in a couple weeks before the Fine Arts Fiesta, it's obvious when it would be a good time to bring that guest in. Mike, you could have come in any month of the year and you would have been prepared.
In January, I really have nothing. I have a nice, slow January.
Yeah,
That's about it.
You have 1 month off.
Yeah, I get a month off every year. It's nice.
But we're going to go through all of the events that Mike oversees throughout the year in the City of Wilkes-Barre. And they're great events. He's one of the busiest, hardworking people I know. And he does such a great job producing these events that we all enjoy. But before we get to your work, Mike, let's talk a little bit about you. You're a native of this area. Myers High School graduate, I believe, right?
Myers High School graduate, went to King's College as well. So I've been in the city for most of those formative years and through my 20s. I think I left for 1 year. That was really it. And then you get drawn back to the mothership. And I've always been really into the area and really enjoyed Wilkes-Barre and all the fun you can have here and everything else.
Did you know early on, like when you were at King's, that you wanted to be involved in event planning? I know that you also have a career in radio, which we'll talk about as well.
Yeah, no, I was going to be the next Howard Stern when I was in King's.
Okay.
I was going to be in New York. I was going to be the number one disc jockey in the world, and you couldn't have told me any different if you tried, because there was no other reason to. That's what I was going to do, and I'd have my own shows, doing my own thing, and that's not the way the world works out. But when you're in college, you think you can do absolutely anything.
So did you have a show on WRKC FM?
I
King's
did.
College 88.5?
I had a morning show on there. I was very big with the prison. Oh, the prisoners loved me. I get letters all the time. They would, we love you. You're the greatest thing ever. We think you're the best. Was not great for my ego, because that really got blown up from there. They loved me.
I went to King's myself, and I spent some time at RKC. They pretty much let the DJs do their own thing. So you didn't have a program director telling you what you had to play.
No structure, nothing.
What did you play?
I played. Now I am a very eclectic music guy, and I was probably not as eclectic as in college as I am now, because when you spend 20 years in radio, you kind of get away from popular music and you move on to, this is really cool, or I like this, or things like that. But I was an always all over the place kind of guy to start with. So I play stuff 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. It was the 90s, so I couldn't go any farther than that. But yeah, it was, I could do any of those things at any time, different music that I liked and different songs that I thought were cool. And I would play that. And then I would do a lot of comedy bits and other things. Like I love doing theater of the mind in radio, and how can we do this and how can we do that, and this would be really funny to do, or I can do this, and it's like a whole setup that works only because it's on radio. Open up a can of soda, it sounds the same as opening up a can of beer. Everything you could possibly do like that.
I think that's one of the strengths of college radio, and I think we have here in Wyoming Valley. I mean, I listen to Wilkes, I listen to King's, I listen to LCC station.
Marywood's is great.
Marywood is a great station. Strong signal too.
Yeah.
I don't know if maybe some of the younger folks that are watching the podcast or listening to the podcast know this, but in the very early 80s, college radio was very instrumental in breaking REM and U2.
Oh yeah, and I mean when I was I was towards the end of it, but we brought so many bands here in through Wilkes and in through King's that were the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones, Alanis Morissette,
Yep.
like really big band. They hadn't, like they were kind of pushed out into the college scene beforehand, and you would go to see these bands in the Wilkes Gym or in the King's Gym, and they were terrific.
Goo
Goo Dolls were in there. Yeah, it was all these Dave Matthews with Tim Reynolds.
Yep.
Just like these people who you think like now, like, well, they were huge at the time. They were doing stadiums. They were doing this. The first thing they did was they came in through these college stations, and we got the opportunity, to say, oh, we're the radio station. We're going to play these, and we're going to do this, and it was really cool.
When you go to King's and you want to go to New York and be Howard Stern, but you do have a terrific voice for radio. I mean, if you are seeing Mike for the first time on the podcast,
it doesn't match at all.
If you're watching right now, you might I know that voice. Mike has been a fixture on one of the station's top-rated radio stations, Rock 107, an absolute juggernaut here in the region. Classic rock station, always huge listenership for a long time. And you do the traffic reports.
I did traffic reports for them, but I also did them for BHT. So I was Skid Mark with Jen and AJ. Back in that was a lot of fun. I did them with Magic 93, where I was Mike Powers. I did them on the Eagle at the time when I was Bald Eagle, and we did I've had 20 some radio names over the years to do it. And,
what was your favorite one?
It's hard to say. Like, I loved Skid Mark, and Skid Mark was a lot of fun because, well, it's funny because what you end up doing is you make a personality for every name you have. So like, there's a Steve Mike personality, and there's a Skid Mark personality, and there's a Mike Powers personality, and there's a Mike Slusser personality. That's a little different than my actual Mike Slusser personality, if that makes sense.
That does make sense. I could see how you're, and maybe even the type of station that it is.
Well, that's how it changes.
The type of music.
Yep.
The audience is different. You'd be a little more edgy or for BHT because you've got teenagers listening.
Right. Yeah.
And then you've got Magic, which would be your adult contemporary and the people in the office.
And there's news talk and sports talk. I still do play-by-play sports. Even still, I do for Misericordia. I still do it for, now it's WEJL Sports Radio, where I get to do high school sports. I still do things for Wilkes and things like that, where I get to pop in and still do sports. And that's a different guy, too. That's my sports guy. That's a lot of me anyway. But, yeah, you get to go through and do that and talk about statistics and games and the strategy of different games. And it's fun because now I get to do so many different sports. I do soccer, I do lacrosse, I do basketball, I do baseball, I do softball, I do football. So there's all these different sports that you have the ability to go out and broadcast, field hockey, like things that, you would have never thought you would be able to do. Soccer would have never even come into my head because I'm not British. So I must stink doing this, but it's really fun to go out and be able to do it.
I would imagine there's a lot of prep work. I'm a sports fan, but I'll admit it. I'm a baseball and a football fan. I would have to do prep work to broadcast a baseball or a football game. I would have to familiarize myself with the rosters and the teams and so forth. But as far as the game itself, I think I know it enough that I could describe it. But you just rattled off a long list of sports.
Volleyball.
And
yeah.
So I would not know how to begin to call a volleyball game. I know that if the ball hits the ground, it's a point, but the nuances of a broadcast.
Yeah.
So how much prep work do you have to put in to broadcast a field hockey game?
Well, field hockey, I still believe, is the only sport where even the players don't know the rules. So it's very helpful in that respect. You'll see, the whistle blows and the girl just goes, okay, and turns and runs the other way. And I'm thinking, every other sport, you lose your mind to the referee. Here, you just go the other way. I don't understand how this works. But it's, some of it you can kind of finesse your way. So some of it you learn the rules and, and then there's sports, and field hockey is, very similar to ice hockey and soccer. So the strategies are kind of the same. Lacrosse has that same thing to it where the strategies are fairly similar. You're trying to attack the same areas. You're trying to set things up the same way. So you can build that into a broadcast and feel the excitement coming into that because you can sense when someone's made it to a position where they can endanger possibly scoring. So you can start to build that into your broadcast and into the excitement of the game.
And we have such a great high school sport. It's a huge part of the culture here in northeastern Pennsylvania. When I was at the Times Leader back in the late 90s, we did a feature weekend story. Our whole features department went out, and the cover story was called Friday Night Lights, and it was about that popularity. And we would just go out, and we all went out and we interviewed somebody. And I remember I was over at Spartan Stadium, and I was looking for the 60-year-old guy who was by himself, who may have graduated from Kingston High School 40 years prior, and he was at the game. Because there's lots of people like that.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And that's a part of, and so I think it was years later there was actually a television series called Friday Night Lights, but we used it before that for our cover story.
We were on top of this before anybody else. We were over this.
But was there a sport that you had to go and broadcast because it was a job for you, and you wound up really liking that sport or loving that sport a lot more than you thought would happen?
Volleyball's a funny one because there's a lot of excitement in volleyball. The one that I always laugh at is I do wrestling, and I was a wrestler in high school, and I always say that's the only sport I was ever actually good in. So I can do baseball, love baseball. I can do football, love football, but I wasn't very good in those sports. But wrestling I was pretty good at. So now I can break that one down. So that's a whole different animal altogether when you do those. So, you're kind of, everything is a different way. Baseball play-by-play is such an art form. You think of, I grew up on Harry Kalas. It's it's a very Harry Kalas broadcast where it's, let the game breathe. Everything's there, build it through. It's different than a John Sterling broadcast. I did a lot of those when I was with ESPN. I ran the board for the Yankees, got to do John Sterling broadcasts. They were completely different. Michael Kay was a different broadcaster. All of these guys, there's a Red Barber school of broadcasting with, you want to make sure that you're always saying the score and the time because, sometimes somebody's not, they just tuned in. They're just there. You got to tell them what's going on. You've got to be prepared. So there's so much art with all of these older sports, but then you can bring those into the newer sports and the way you broadcast games.
I will say that I'm a big baseball fan, and there are times when the game is on TV, because I'm a Yankee fan, so most of them are on Yes Network, and I still, especially on the weekend, if I have stuff to do around the house, I'd just rather have it on the radio.
Oh, yeah.
I love it. Doing some yard work, what a great way to pass a couple of hours.
And Dave Sims is really good, so that helps the cause as well. Yeah, he is.
So let's get back to the trajectory of your career. So you get into radio, and you're doing all this work, and I've always wondered, and I've never asked you this, I think someone said to me when you got hired, what's Mike's background? I know he's on the radio. And I said, well, I know that Rock 107 birthday bash is a big event because, he used to do it up at the Woodlands and the Genettis, and they bring in a national act, still do. Mm-hmm. Now it's sort of at the arena with Alice Cooper. Well, now
Alice Cooper does an evening show on Rock 107, so that kind of moved in nicely. Post-pandemic, there's been less birthday bashes.
Right. But was working on those helpful in your job today?
It gave me an idea of things that existed in bringing in those bands, which definitely, I think people don't fully understand. They don't get riders. They don't get that. It was really Rock 107's Hoover that did so much of that work. I was just like, hey, can you go get me this? Can you get me that?
He's now the program.
He's now the program director, and he's the afternoon guy there. He did so much work on those, and would have to work on, what band are we choosing? How much does that band cost? How can we route them in? How is this? All of those things that now I have to do with our concert. He was doing that legwork at the time, and he was doing it without the ability to have someone like Will Beekman or AJ Jump to help him out either, which I have the ability to at least go to those guys that are really good at it, and right. I don't have to start going through agents and things like that, and having those guys to do those things has really been incredibly helpful to me. But he did a great job with all of those things, kind of having to do it on his own, but dealing with riders. Okay, how much do we need to have for them? They want this, they need that. This is a back line. These are these things that this kind of stuff I don't think you realize goes into all these concerts.
Sure. And then you could tell them, we can offer you this much money, we can provide you with this hospitality, if you need rooms, lodging, this is the gear we can provide, this is what you need to provide. And there's there's a lot of work that goes into that.
Yeah.
And now you do that for some of the events that you work on, including one of the newer ones going
Right.
into year 3. So now here you are in your 3rd year on this job, right?
Yeah.
And for those listening and watching, I just jumped on the city website. And so Mike oversees, in March, the St. Patrick's Day Parade. In April, the Cherry Blossom Festival. In June, the Farmers Market, which starts and goes through November. In July, the huge Wilkes-Barre Old-Fashioned 4th of July in Kirby Park, which is not just fireworks. It's food, it's vendors, it's rides. It goes on all day. Then we've got the national concert in August with going into year 3. We had the Guess Who the first year, and last year we had Mickey from Starship. Just did a terrific show.
Yeah, Mickey Thomas.
And they played the Jefferson Airplane stuff. They played the Jefferson Starship stuff. They played the Starship stuff. I mean, it was like, if you're a fan of all the Starships, it was the perfect set. One that you probably would not see either of the bands do individually.
Right.
And that's what was so great about it. And then the Multicultural Parade in September, Halloween on the Square in October, 2 events in November, the Veterans Parade, the Christmas Parade. So, and there's
We have
some
a Santa 5K.
Santa's 5K
in
now,
December.
too.
Yeah.
And that's another one in December.
Yeah.
And so following a very busy November. What led to the City of Wilkes-Barre and you coming to, an agreement that you would come and run all these events?
It was Mayor Brown is incredible. When I run the South Wilkes-Barre Skyhawk Soccer Club. So back a few years prior, we used to do movies on a Friday night. So we would have movies on the soccer field. We'd put a little screen up, we'd have the movies there, and we'd bring them down. And Mayor Brown was a big driver of that. He supported us. He would come and put all of the work in with us. He would be there staking in the screen that we had to do, setting up the table beforehand. He'd be working in the stand, making fries and handing stuff out and doing all that. And, when you work together with someone like on an event like that, and then, eventually when he becomes mayor, okay, this isn't Mayor Quimby. Like, he's not going to put the sash on, start smiling, shake everybody's hand, and have no idea what's going on. This is a guy that really, rolls up his sleeves, gets the work done. And it's those kinds of people you want to work for. Like, he's not afraid to jump in there. He's, he has an idea, he's going to support it 100%. And, when he reached out to me and said, like, hey, listen, this job is open. And my first thought there is, oh, everyone's going to kill you. Like, this is rough. Like, you're just going to constantly be, you're going to have vendors yelling at you, you're going to have this, that. Like, do I want to do that? And, he kind of sold to me in a different way. He said, like, listen, you love the city. You love to do these things. You love to go to these things. He's like, what makes them good. What makes, where the problems are. He's like, you can do this in the way you are. And I realized that, I say this to people all the time. That was radio. Radio was, you go out someplace, something's broken, you have to fix it. And there's never a time when you go out and everything is just, oh, no problem. That was 2 seconds, easy to go. You had to prepare, you had to be able to have this set. So that's events. Like, every event, nothing goes right. Everything is put out of fire. Everything's that. But I do that. And you know it as well as anybody. Yeah. Every event is, okay, we have this problem. All right, what's the solution to that problem? And you've got to solve all those problems. And everybody that's at that event, you could have thousands, we had 6,000 people at Rock in the River. We had 25,000 people in the square we had 8,000 people in the square for Jefferson Starship. We had 25,000 people in Kirby Park for the 4th of July, a couple of days ago. None of them know that any of that stuff went wrong. They have no idea. They're like, that was great. That was so much fun. But you just do it. You make it roll. It all goes through, and no one ever notices that. And that's just fun to me. I enjoy doing that.
It takes a certain disposition. You need to keep your cool. You need to almost expect it as part of the day sometimes. And I think that after you show to your team and the people you're working with, then that tends to keep everybody calm, because they know it'll be all, the people that go pulling their hair out and getting all worked up over the fact that this band was supposed to be here at 3 and it's 3:30 and they're not yet, and everything's going to fall apart tonight. No, it won't. What are we going to, here's what we're going to do.
Yep. We got it. We'll do this instead. We'll set this up here. It's a lot.
Let's go through these events, because St. Patrick's Day. One of the things that I want to compliment you and Mayor Brown on is a little change that you made to the parade a few years back. That it turned out to be a big change, and that is bringing in these big floats.
Oh yeah.
Because the first time that you had them, it was a news story that these were added. I think I was already working here at the Bureau at the time, and I got to go see these. I mean, I usually go to the parades anyway, but I was on the lookout for them. And you can't miss them if you're looking. They start coming. I remember thinking, how is that going to get under the bridge for Wilkes? And I guess it has to be taken down and put underneath. So
it's a show.
That St. Patrick's Day parade and bringing in those floats and then doing the same thing at Christmas. How much planning goes into parades of those size?
Well, it's great. We use Bill Smith with Smith Productions. He's worked Macy's Thanksgiving Day parades. He does stuff for Macy's. He's done that, and he's out of Williamsport, so it's fairly local. He builds those balloons himself. He can design them. He does drawings and builds them up, and we have those. He comes that day. We fill them up with helium. Anybody who ever wants to hold a giant balloon, I'm always looking for people to hold a giant balloon. It's a lot of fun. Like, if you can do it. Mr. Pip says it's the greatest thing he's ever seen. But it's
giving back to the community in a great way.
It's so great. But it's so much fun, and they are like the look on everyone's face, like as I go by, it's like, oh, look at that thing. Like, there it goes. And you're right, it just adds that one extra thing to the parade. And it's so funny, because I feel like this job, and I know that you feel the same way with this. You do something, you're like, that was great. Okay, now how do I make that better next year?
Yeah.
What can I add to this that adds something else? And, you come up with ideas, sure, but you also steal ideas. I don't know if I ever expected myself to be someone who watches every parade that could possibly be televised just to see what's in the parade. Because maybe there's something there I can figure out a way to do, and something I can add into the parade that'll be neat, for next year. Oh, I didn't think about that. People give you suggestions. They say, hey, what about this? Like, I can make that work. Let's put that in there.
Yeah, I mean, the addition of these floats. I mean, last year I went over to the Christmas parade, and I was on the corner by Dunkin' Donuts in between Madonna's, and I just said, well, let me get something for our Facebook, and I got a shot of the giant Frosty coming around the corner, and you see the Boscovs and the big buildings, and then it goes in front of the Wilkes-Barre banner, and we just threw it up on our Facebook page and said, something about the parade happened today. I may have been our most tracked post of the year. I mean, it was like crazy.
Well, Frosty was taking over the whole city like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. So
it kind of looked like something out of Ghostbusters a little bit. It did. But really, it was, I just think that for people that weren't there, particularly, there was a little bit of, oh, wow. It easily looked like it could have been down Broadway.
Yeah. And it looks so cool coming down South Main Street like that. And like you said, and then I always tell people there's 3 different ways you can watch them. So you can stand by the Wilkes Bridge and watch them go under the bridge, which is a show in itself. Because you've got to go, you jump here, we got to turn around here, go underneath. You got to turn this snowman on his back and slide him underneath there. And it's like, that's neat in its own right. Then you can watch them come right down Main Street. Like if you set up by Boscov's, it looks amazing with all the buildings coming down and with everyone there and the tower behind, the clock tower there and all these things. And then you can see them come around the square where it's like a little more open, and it's, they go by the Kirby, and it's really like interesting that you can kind of get a different view of them from different places, and you could do that 3 parades in a row.
And there's like 4 or 5 big ones in the parade.
Yeah.
So when that last one goes under the Wilkes Bridge and is up, is that when you breathe a little bit of sigh of relief? Like, okay, we made it.
There, any of those parades, there are no sighs of relief until you get home that night. That's when the sighs of relief come, because it's another one of those things that who's going to show up for the parade? Who didn't show up for the parade? Where am I going to put this spot? I have to get back to the MC and tell them that this is there. You've got to get back to this and do that. There's little things with all of them, but
when the mayor plugs in the tree, it lit up.
Yeah, that's big.
That's a big one.
That's a big one right there. The kids flip the switch. You got to make sure the lights go on. Right. It's not an easy task sometimes.
In the weather. Cherry Blossom Festival, a great spring tradition. When you and I were younger, it was on the square.
Yeah.
And then they moved it over to Kirby, 15 years ago maybe, I'm thinking.
Yeah, it started on the River Commons. Like on the court, like back when it was the lower level,
Okay.
you had that extra space. You could do it right there on River Street. So you had a little, little cherry blossom festival there, and then moved to the square for a couple of years, and then they moved it over to Kirby Park for I think the last 20. I want to say I think it was around 2000 that I went to Kirby Park, and it's nice to have it in Kirby Park. There's a lot of having that midway, you can come down with all of the vendors and all of the food, and that's another one where I get to like play with Mike's little games that he gets to play with himself, where I can say like, what kind of food do I want?
Yeah.
Oh, it's this food truck. Like, let's see, there's this one here. It's April, let's bring this one in. This one's big at the Bloomsburg Fair. Let me bring this one in. Let's see what we can do with these guys. Let's do this. So you're always looking for like something tasty. I have vendors that come from Virginia and come from different parts. The one, the Taste Our Balls, which is very popular in Bloomsburg, she's from Wilkes-Barre. She lives, but the only event she does in Wilkes-Barre is the Cherry Blossom Festival. Besides that, they go throughout the entire way and sell fried balls.
I've gotten to know 8 of them anyway from Rockin' the River.
Sure.
We've stayed consistent, so we don't have room to add really, as you know, because you're on that committee.
And I get asked all the time, so
Yes,
I know for sure.
And so do I. But it's a neat. They're neat people. It's a lifestyle.
Oh, I mean, listen, there are.
I love our vendors. They're big for fun personalities.
I say there are 2 things in my life I will never do. I will never own a bar because I've known successful bar owners, and I don't want to do that. And the other thing I would never do is run a food truck. I mean, those guys, it is a passion. You have to love it because you're going to go you're dragging out all this food. You got to get all these things, plan ahead of time. Come in, get all this food stocked up beforehand, put it in your truck. Now you've got to back up a trailer. I don't know who's backed up a trailer before. It's not super easy work. And we put them, I want you to go in this space right here. Oh, I've got to parallel park a trailer on the 2 wheels that don't turn. Yeah, no problem. I'll do that. And these guys, they go and do that. Then you've got to go. You got to cook all the food. Sometimes the crowd is fast. Sometimes the crowd is slow. Sometimes they want this. Sometimes they want that. And you're just out there, And
you're at the disposal of the weather. They could make a lot of money. They could not make a lot of money.
Right. I mean, this spring, none of every event's been rained on. All these guys, sit there, guys, girls, whatever. But they're always. That you're constantly stuck with based on the weather and how much you're going to make. And
our friend Mike Dale from the Kirby, who is our production manager at Rockin' the River, he likes to get the stage in there first in the morning, of course, and then he tells the vendors they could start showing up mid-morning, and they do, but most of them just stay.
Yeah.
They'll just stay there all day, so they're not going to sell any food for 6 hours. But they're very relaxed in their
they have that same disposition. The really good ones have that same disposition. You can't be a nervous food truck owner or you're not going to make it very long.
Hang
it just
out here
doesn't
by
work.
the river until it opens.
Yeah.
It doesn't open for 6 hours. But they set up their chairs and they talk with you. I love working with them. I'm not surprised that you do as well.
Yeah.
In June we get the farmers market rolling. And that goes until early November.
It does. I like to say I'm a very spoiled brat when it comes to food. I had a Sicilian grandmother who was off the boat Sicilian, loved to cook. My wife still thinks she was some sort of witch that could make any meat tender and had made her own all these things. So I make my own pasta. I use every fresh ingredient I can. So I've been a big farmer's market guy forever. When I was in college at King's, I was the one kid sitting there watching Stanky play, with a bag of green beans and corn that I was going to go home and make into something because even though I was 20 years old, that was that was the stuff I enjoyed doing. So it's so much fun to be able to now go and develop relationships with these farmers and talk to them and hey, I want to plant garlic or I want to do this or I'm thinking about doing this over here or I'm doing when does this come in? When is this the freshest? What makes this ripe? What color do you want to see in this squash that makes it really, taste good as opposed to, when it's a little out of season or a little in season and it's there. All of those things are super interesting to me. And it's just that extra thing I can add into, something that's fun. So it's you find a little thing in all these events that's there.
Plus you've got the food vendors there.
Sure.
And you're also booking some music.
And booking some music, and I love doing, especially, like it's I like finding them like a little earlier, a little younger, like that it's kind of their gig that they get to go do it. Some of the older guys like to do it too. I mean, we have Dustin Douglas every year. Like, Dustin Douglas is not a farmer's market band guy. Like, that's not, here's this, guitar god on stage with all this stuff. But you know what? He loves to come and play the acoustic at the, take the afternoon off, come to the farmer's market and play a couple songs just because it's fun. It's fun to do. And, he gets to take the afternoon off. And it's like, you don't get to do that very often.
For those who might be listening to the podcast outside of Luzerne County, Dustin Douglas is a local musician. And Mike and I both have done a lot of work with him with events that we've produced. And I went to a CD release party about 2 weeks ago. And I've seen Dustin play since he was 15 years old. And I told him afterwards, I said, Dustin, I think you're the greatest guitarist I've ever seen. I mean,
he's very good.
He's really good.
Really. I think Dustin and I go back and forth on this because we're trying to remember exactly when it was. The going back to the Rock 107 birthday bash, you would have the headlining band. We had local bands that went back and forth between these two stages, and there was always the midnight band. So it was the band that played after the headliner, and often, especially when I was younger, that was my introduction band, was to go out there and do that. And I think twice I had to introduce Lemon Jelly to go out there with this kid that's out there playing. And I'm thinking, I'm going back. I want to get back to this room so I can go, hang out with the band or get back to the party room and make sure it's there. I'm like trying to get off stage as fast as I can. I'm going to put this 15-year-old out there to go out and play music at midnight to these 8 drunk guys.
Oh, yeah. I mean, but he probably, but Dustin hits the stage like a tornado. Yeah. That goes well into the fall, as we said, actually into November. Now, you just mentioned this before. I'm going to guess, looking at this long list of events that are the cities, and we're going to talk about some of the other ones that are big that you have to assist with, but you're not the organizer of. But these that we're talking about now these are Mike's events. The old-fashioned 4th of July. You just talked about it a few minutes ago. 25,000 people, rides, vendors. I'm assuming that's your biggest event of the year.
It's definitely the most people that we see the whole year. It's a lot. I mean, I am the caretaker of that event. That's not my event. That's its own monster. I mean, just the credit of that and the years that they've done it. I believe this is the 40th year this is the 39th, and next year will be the 40th year with vendors. So before that, it was all nonprofits that would do it, and eventually the nonprofits started bringing in food, but they would get like a sponsor that was one of the foods. But it's just a monster. Like when someone says that there's fireworks, and I remember my first year getting a little offended by this, but whenever somebody sees fireworks and they go, oh, they were great fireworks, they might have been better than Kirby Park, and your first thought is like, talk about it. I do the Kirby Park fireworks. The Kirby Park fireworks are the greatest fireworks that ever existed on the face of the earth. But that's the standard.
That's a compliment.
You start to realize, wait, that's the compliment. The compliment is that you have that standard. You're what everybody goes to. There's a reason why not a lot of people like to do 4th of July fireworks, as a group, because that's Kirby Park's day. That's what you do, and everybody knows that. That's why there's so many people in that park. That's why there's so many things going on. And there's just it's a tradition that everyone would strive to with their event. Like there's someone who runs an event who doesn't think one day I would love it to be the 4th of July fireworks in Kirby Park.
It's funny you just use the word tradition, but I live over near Pringle. And so I can watch the Kirby Park, and I just did this the other night. I can watch the Kirby Park fireworks from the deck of my house, plus everything else that anybody's blowing off across the whole valley. I mean, you get a show on the 4th of July. I can see the smoke rise. But a couple of years ago, my 16-year-old daughter, she's 18 now, but this was when she was 16, 2 years ago, she said, Dad, I want to go down to Kirby Park with my friends for the 4th. And there was this part of me at first was like, wait a minute, this is our tradition here. Everybody comes up. And I looked and I go, yeah, you got to do that. Yeah. That's a rite of passage.
You really do.
When you're a teenager, you need to be at Kirby Park, eventually you'll come back to the house. But if you need to do that for a couple of years now.
And then when you have your first set of kids and you're there and you see, I mean, just it's unbelievable because it's kids of people that have their kids in strollers to toddlers to tweens to teenagers and everything in between is just there. There's people who are bringing their grandkids, and it's just, you're right, it's just one of those events. And yeah, you're lucky. Like, I grew up right on the other side of the river. My parents still, that's where my kids were. They're sitting on my parents' front porch, watching the fireworks because like they just have to look over the river and they're right there, and like that's what they have. But that's not everybody's view.
Right.
Like, you've got to come see those, and it's absolutely unbelievable.
And it is a great tradition. A new one going into the third year, and I know a little bit of the history of this event because a couple of years ago, the Fine Arts Fiesta, which happens in May, booked the Spin Doctors to be the headliner. And they've always had good headliners, but that particular show brought out a lot of people. There was a band that had a couple of great songs that still get airplay, that a lot of people in their 40s, 50s remember from the 90s, even people in their 30s probably. And it wound up, being very, very successful. And I remember your boss, Mayor Brown, who I'd gotten to know through Rockin' the River, said, "Alan, did you see that crowd at the Spin Doctors?" I said, "Yeah, it was terrific. I was there." And he goes, "We got to see if we could do something like that." And that was the impotence of the concert on the square.
Yeah, because really, when I started with the city, so it was 3 years ago, they had just they were in the middle of that project of redoing the stage on the square. And the architectural firm did a terrific job designing it. Larry Newman, was, all over that the whole time from Diamond City Partnership, just like going through all these things. And I looked at it, and I remember Brian Benedetti comes to me and he goes, "Well, what's the dimensions of that?" So we do the dimensions, and he goes, "I think we can get like a big band to play there." And I was like, okay, because it kind of worked in there. And as soon as you saw the setup, before the Spin Doctors went on stage or anything, just that Wednesday before, when we're just getting things set up for the Fine Arts Fiesta, and you looked at the stage and you were like, oh boy, that's a festival stage. That's not this is a little stage in the middle, like
band shell.
Yeah, this isn't a band shell. This isn't like we pulled the band shell on top of here and we opened it up and played it. This is a stage. This is like a performance area. And, and I said to the mayor, like, I think we can do a lot of like bands on here. Like, bands are going to be itching to play in this spot. It's a really great spot. And then he sat down with you and Larry and said, how can we do this? And I believe it was the first thing that came out of your mouth is, well, we need to find Will Beekman.
Yeah.
We need someone who's going to be able to do this, who's, who understands what goes into this. And, we really need to bring Mike in, obviously. And
I'm glad you remember that, Mike, because it's a funny story. So we all go out to lunch the next meeting or two, and we're having lunch. And the mayor took us to a Mexican restaurant over on North Main.
Yep.
And we're talking about the concert, and I think we were starting to talk about the Guess Who and Better Than Ezra, and we were kicking around some names. And the mayor looks at me and goes, "No offense to you, Alan, but I need someone like Will here to help really book this show." And I was like, "I'm the one that told you to call him. I'm the one that asked him to be on the committee." Why would I be offended?
Like, we know what Will does. It's pretty great. It's not a skill set that anybody else possesses at this table.
Yeah. So I thought that was pretty hilarious. And we'll just start laughing. We're like, yeah, Alan's the one that asked me to come here. But anyway, yeah.
And so that was
the Guess Who.
It was so crazy.
And now AJ's
AJ Jump helps as well now. But I mean, the Guess Who, I don't even know how to explain that. Like, it's one of those things where I always say there's things you do in your life that if you had told yourself a year before you were going to do it, you wouldn't have believed yourself. And that day, it's a crazy long day. All of a sudden I'm, texting back and forth, and I'm like friends with this tour manager who did like an Alice Cooper tour. We're sending pictures of like cutting like large fields and like grass lines on it because, like she was really into that and I was really into it. So it was like, oh, I have this picture of this for this. Now we're doing that. And then you get to the end of the night and like, the keyboardist, says to me like, oh, come on, you can come and hang out with us. You're just going to watch these guys, break down anyway. You can't touch it. Oh, okay, great. now I'm sitting, in the Oyster Bar in Genetti's, learning how to drink tequila from the Guess Who. And I'm like, how do you really explain that to someone? Like, he's like, make sure you do this first and this is, it's like, oh, okay. Like,
That's a cool night.
that's a really cool night. Like, that shouldn't happen. And then, then the next year we get to, Starship featuring Mickey Thomas, and it's the same thing. It's like, holy crap, like, they're going to go out here, they're going to do this. This band is like tremendous. And like, even you're watching the sound check going like, this isn't a band that you see like normally. These guys really are, this is a national level act that you're bringing in here, and to watch them do that. And then this year we come up with a Rock and Roll Hall of Famer. Like, we're not like, oh, here we go. Yeah, no, we're going to put a Rock and Roll Hall of Famer on the stage.
Yeah.
It's like, it keeps building and getting bigger and bigger and better and better. And, to bring in John Oates is insane. I mean, obviously, you're talking Rock and Roll Hall of Famer, National Songwriting Hall of Famer. But, like, he had an album last year that he had just put out, tore it off of the album. He's putting out another album a week after our show. Like, this guy's still out there. He's still writing music. He's still, doing this. But in the meantime, like, he's going to show up and he's going to play, the Hall & Oates stuff. And he's like, oh, yeah, no, these are the classics. We're still going to play. We're still going to do these. We're still going to do that. We have, I got a new band together. Here's my keyboardist. Here's this. He's got, like, he's in Nashville now. So he's got all these Nashville guys that are these incredible musicians who he puts together and puts on this new album. And, hey, we're going on the road.
So have you had conversations directly with him?
With John Oates?
You're not management.
Crazy. Like, he
That's unusual.
He just sent like an email to us. Oh, these are the songs I'm going to play.
That's wild.
And I'm like, okay. And then he sends me like an email like, okay, this is what we need. And it's very low key, very like, I'm like, are you sure? Like, do you know you're John Oates? Like, don't you want like a chalice of brown M&Ms and like, like these different drinks? But no, he's like, nah, I just, give me this. I'll be fine.
I think that one thing that some folks might not realize, and the only reason I know it is because I did my homework when I was covering some Hall & Oates shows when they came into town. I think they were at the Bud Light Amphitheater and the Kirby, and they may have been at Montage once. I think they were. So I covered them a couple of times when I was reviewing shows for the newspaper. They are the most successful pop rock duo of all time.
Yeah.
They sold more records, had more hits than the Everly Brothers, than Simon and Garfunkel. There's been some great duos, but they're number one.
Yeah, when you go through and like, you do the Apple Music like essentials, it's like it's a really long list. It's not like it's a couple. Like, there's a lot. And like, we're bringing in the guy that wrote those songs, the guy that played on those songs, and the guy that sang on those songs. And, it's like, that's like a really big deal. And, you don't get that opportunity to sit down in like a park and grab your chairs and, and it's obviously it's growing, and, we shut down the roads. So there's people literally in the street with chairs and going back in that direction. And you just look over this crowd and you're thinking like, wow, this is unbelievable. Like, how did we go from, we're a couple of guys playing in a band shell to this in like in a couple of years?
It's been a great thing to watch progress. My compliments to you and the team and the city and the mayor and now people are asking. People are asking me in the spring, who's the band this year on the square? I'm like, oh, the mayor will let you know soon enough. But they're working on it.
Yeah, and
but the fact that they're looking for it.
Yeah, and I can't even tell you how involved he is in this. Like, you could say like, oh, it's stuff you do. He is intently into every. Like, it's like, and it's funny because, he has a lot of mayor things that he has to do all day, and he's dealing with this and dealing with that. And like, I'll get a call at like 8 o'clock at night of, okay, so I was looking at this band and this band and this band. Can we do this band and can we do this? And, and then, and you're like, oh, well, I don't know, Mayor, that band's $400,000. I don't think we have that. Because this is all sponsorships. Like, we do this entire concert, and the same way we do Rock in the River as well. The county doesn't pay for Rock in the River. All the sponsors pay for Rock in the River. This concert, none of the taxpayers pay for it. It all comes out of sponsors. So, these are really expensive to put on. Like, there's a reason why they're $100 tickets or $50 tickets at these venues, because you got to recoup the costs.
Mike, for everybody watching, because I think Mike would probably appreciate saying this as well. The county does not pay for Rocking the River. The city does not
pay for the concert
on the square. So
No.
there's no taxpayer dollars going. We'll still fix the roads. Trust me.
Yeah. This isn't. This isn't. We're not missing out on any potholes because of this. Right. If I had to take $100,000 out of the city, taxpayer funds to pay for this, it would probably be a little bit of a, But it's not. But it's not. It is. We go through there, and I mean, a huge thank you to you with the county, who are one of our big sponsors, to Diamond City Partnership, to the Luzerne Foundation, to Franchelli Enterprises, to McCarthy Tire, that all give us all of this money that allows us to pay for John Oates to come to the square. That's not, he's a nice guy. He seems to be low maintenance, and he's a really great musician, but, he's also a Rock and Roll Hall of Famer that gets a lot of money to play,
And it's an investment in the town. I mean, you're investing in your community with these sponsorship dollars, because we all know, and it's not a Wilkes-Barre thing, and I've talked about it before, the downtown workforce changed permanently after COVID. Though some of the offices workers are never coming back. You go down to Wall Street right now and see empty office buildings, because the stockbrokers that used to come in from Connecticut and New Jersey and in the suburbs aren't there anymore. And so everybody has to work harder to try to keep the downtown vibrant, and doing more events is certainly one of the great ways to do that. And you're investing it in your town.
Absolutely. I mean, you think of what we have in downtown Wilkes-Barre with restaurants. I mean, it is the world. It is global. There is, what kind of cuisine would you like? It's in downtown Wilkes-Barre. And that's an amazing thing to have. But that's got to be supported by people. People have to go down there, and they have to go to these restaurants. And it's great that they do on a normal night, but it's very helpful to bring in, people from all over the place, put you all downtown. Everyone goes and stops at one of those restaurants and does that. I mean, the restaurants, are like, well, that's great. Yeah, we want that night. It's great having the Kirby downtown, to do these shows, to put people in those restaurants and people that go during the week. But that's all really important things to keep, it's a changing downtown. It's an evolving downtown. Like you said, there's not necessarily the offices down there that are, people are there for. Now you've got to support businesses that people have to come to as a destination.
Come down. And these events do that. Halloween, you've got, let's get into the fall a little bit. The
multicultural as well.
The multicultural parade, the Halloween on the Square, the Veterans Parade, multicultural, one of the newer events, but gaining some traction.
Another one of my favorite food events, where literally it's, like I said, we have the world downtown, and we have the world in the city. The city is a melting pot. We have, there's a difference between Dominican food and Mexican food and Colombian food and Peruvian food and Puerto Rican food. And it kind of gets put into that, it's a Mexican restaurant and that's it. But it's not. It's all different food, and it's all different ways. And I love being able to, celebrate those cultures, celebrate that cuisine, celebrate the entertainment. St. Nick's brings down those Azteca dancers, with that traditional, Mayan, I think it's Mayan dance, Azteca, whatever. Mm-hmm. And that's what? Where are you? That's not a thing. But those people are in your neighborhood. They're, they go to church every week, and they're together as this group, and they do this, and they come in and they do these things, and it's you need to celebrate that. You need to put these people on the stage and let them do that dance. The Colombians come in, they have their flowing the flowing dresses and everything else, and then we have people that'll come in and do R&B and rap, and it's just as many different kinds of ways that you can celebrate these things. And I'm telling you this year, and I hear it every year, and it's going to happen this year, no matter how hard they try not to come or how many other things come up, but there will be a Polish vendor at the Multicultural Parade. Because that's the one I get the most. Well, wait. How come there's no potato pancakes? And I'm thinking, okay, well, every week there's potato pancakes and pierogies and hushki on the square. But, yes, you are correct. Right on the day of the multicultural, there are other things that those specific vendors go to, other events. And we're trying to find another one to come in to do it just for that. But, yes, we will do that this year.
And it not only the performances and the color. It's a very colorful event
Yes.
too, with the costumes and the food. But I think it also just makes a statement that this is a welcoming community and that we embrace the way that it's evolving, as you said.
Absolutely. I mean, it really is. And I mean, so many of them have come in and done really great things in the city. And, you know, it's, you know, like, you know, as they buy houses and fix them up and do all these things that, like, yeah, that needs to be celebrated. And it needs to be celebrated what you have.
And of course, the Veterans Parade, so important,
Yes.
that you do every year. And that comes over Market Street Bridge.
Starts in Kingston.
Kingston.
Yeah, over by, it basically starts at Tommy's, like all the way at the end of the Kingston Corners there, and will come all the way down. And, you know, that's so much, like, I love having, like, Boy Scout troops and the all the different Shriners, and, you know, you have, like, all their different groups that are in there. Plus, you know, you get to see a howitzer come to the square, which is, it's always a little interesting.
Yeah, right.
So, right, yeah, you know, you get that as well. But, like, you know, you have, you have these, the 109th is there, and they all march in it, and you get that full complement of them, and it's, you know, it's a long parade, which I think sometimes, like, people say, like, oh, you know, I don't know, but, like, when you think about it, if you go from Kingston Corners to the square, which is a really long distance, and it's 4 and 5 deep all the way across there, that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people that come out for that parade, and really, you know, it's a very respectful parade. And then once again, that's not me. I have, you know, I'm there and I do stuff and I'm on that committee, but that Veterans Committee, you know, they do a lot of neat things with it too. They have an essay contest where they have, you know, the essay contest winners. They have the top, you know, like whatever branch of service they have, you know, someone from there that's in that. And, you know, it hasn't happened in my first 3 years, but I'm hoping it happens this year, is that we also can do a flyover too. We have that can set up. It's just that the weather has to kind of cooperate with how that happens as well, that's really cool. I mean, I've seen that before I was, you know, as part of this, but yeah, you get that, the flyover is just like, yeah, you feel that one in your chest.
And, you know, these parades help us mark the passage of time. We have very, very few World War II veterans with us still.
Sure.
Those that served in Korea are now 90.
Yeah.
And then the Vietnam veterans are now, you know, pushing 80. And then those that were in the Gulf Wars in the 90s, Desert Storm, they're relatively young still, but you can see.
You only say that because they're your age,
well,
my age. Yeah, that's when they're our age. They're relatively young.
Hopefully, they've got some time
Yeah.
left. But you could see how important it is to acknowledge the different generations and how they won't be here forever, and you really need to.
Yeah, and you get that 50th anniversary of Korea too. So it's just like okay, that happened. Like
Yeah.
okay, well yeah, that's you know.
Sure.
It's a long time.
I just thought of it, but actually,
Or 75th, I should say, of the Korean. Yeah.
I guess this is the 50th anniversary of the official end of the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
75, right?
Mm-hmm. So that's you think that's 50 years ago. Okay, well, if you were, you know, 20 there, well,
Yeah.
you're 70 now.
Right. So, and then of course the Halloween as well is another one.
That's neat too. I love that. It's always fun to see like all the kids dressed up, and it's kind of it's not a trunk or treat. You know, there's a million trunk or treats that happen, but you know, you get to like come down Main Street and go from table to table to table, and you get to see the kids, you know, walking around like in their costumes, and it's a little bit more kind of free flowing. It's kind of like a meld of trick or treating and the trunk or treat, because you know, like how many kids, you know, you don't. A lot of people are just like, oh, we're not going to go trick-or-treating. You know, we don't want to do that. But we'll go to all these trunk-or-treats. But this is kind of like, the kids get to walk around, they get to do this, and the people you get to engage a little bit more with the kids that way.
Do you think that, you know, having that, you know, it's another way too, because, you know, I mean, there are people that live in the valley, and it's hard for me to think this way because I grew up in Kingston. And my buddies and I, when we were teenagers, we would ride over the Market Street Bridge and you know, ride through the water fountain at 1 o'clock in the morning in the summer. So going to town was never, I never thought of it as that. Because
right.
I grew up in town, basically. You know, I grew up in the middle of the valley. I lived in South Wilkes-Barre for a while when I was a kid, and then Kingston. So that's my home, my roots. But for a lot of folks, that live in Luzerne County and in the valley, they're coming downtown. And so for some of the kids to come down for an egg hunt or that the Riverfront Parks Committee puts together, or trick-or-treating, they don't get down to the city that much.
No, and it's another great way to bring people downtown. It's a great way to get them to the restaurants and get them through that area and have fun. And the Easter egg hunt, they do a tremendous job of that with the Downtown Business Association, with the Bunny Trail and bringing everybody through that.
John made a Downtown Business Association.
Yeah.
I associate him with Riverfront Park.
Right.
He's involved with both.
John's involved with everything. So
yes. Yeah. Now, we just talked about a whole lot of events, and you think, okay, that's going to keep Mike very busy. But then there's other things that happen too that some of these events are getting to be very big, that I see you working at, that maybe you weren't the person that had to lay out the entire plan, but you are still involved because it's on public square. And I'm talking about things like the ice rink that comes up every year, the car shows, the Fine Arts Fiesta, Pride Fest, the Wyoming Valley Run. And so, Pride Fest, I think they said they had 4,000 people last year. Fine Arts Fiesta goes on for 4 days, takes over the entire square. The Wyoming Valley Run now going in its third year. They start in Pittston, come down the west side over the Market Street Bridge, and they wrap up on the square.
This year we're actually going to do the final party on the square as well. So we'll do the end party. But it's
so you're involved in a lot more than just the city events. There are other events that you have to.
Well, if it happens in the city, I'm somewhat involved. I don't have to do the planning on all of them. Like, I get to breathe occasionally, but it's fun because it is like those events were like, once again, your only job is basically to be there and can you help with this? Can you help with this? Can you help with that? And I'm always willing to jump in. That with anything, it's like, okay, yeah, what do you need? Let's go. Let's hop in. We'll do this. And but it's neat sometimes to see different people put things together, and it's the experience of that too. So you get to see, hey, that's a really good job. I mean, listen, Pride Fest is huge, and the Rainbow Alliance does a terrific job with it. And we have to coordinate, a lot of that with, between the Department of Public Works and the police and the fire, and it seems like every year it's 100 degrees for it too, which always makes it, puts a little extra danger into the day with making sure everyone's hydrated and everything else. But they do a terrific job of their advertising and their sponsorships and making that a huge event, and the entertainment and everything that they have. And you learn things from that. Okay, well, wait a second. Yeah, they did this here. Maybe we'll put that into the St. Patrick's Day parade or the multicultural parade, because you learn things like that, and you have to be able to evolve with every event. And really, when you have a successful event, I want to know what you're doing. How are you doing this? Like Brian Benedetti has been doing that for, since the dinosaurs walked the earth.
Fine Arts Fiesta.
Yeah, the Fine Arts Fiesta is...
He was on the podcast this spring. I think it's 40 years that he's been working with Fine Arts Fiesta. And that's a terrific event that is another tradition in the city that Mike, I'm assuming you're helping them with, what can we do for the city to shut down the streets? What kind of security can we provide? Suggesting some things for vendor layout and things like that.
Not even that far, because Brian has that all down like it's nobody's business. But I'm there for any, if he has a question, hey, we need to get power to here. Okay, can you set that up? Hey, we have these vendors here. Can you make sure they're all licensed? We have this here. Those. Brian makes my life very easy. It really is. He is a machine. I don't know what happens. He runs that thing, unbelievably. It is what it is because of him. So it's nice to be able to I'm just listening to what he says. What do you need? Okay, this, great. What do you do? This, all right. What do you want me to go over here? Do this, sure. And it really kind of it's fun to watch him work.
I got to see him do something that was really neat when he was on the podcast in April. He told us that every year when the headliner is about to go on, whoever it is every year, he gathers them around off to the stage, and he gives them this neat pep talk, and I want you to go out there and be yourselves. There's no pressure here. This is a free community show. Everyone's here just to hear your music, but I want you to have a great time. I want you to do what feels natural to you, and I just want you to embrace this moment. You're going to go out there and you're going to play to a lot of people who can't wait. And he told us that he's been doing that for 40 years or so. And so this year, the Badleys were headlining, and the Fiesta asked me if I would introduce them on stage. And of course, I was honored to do so. The guys are friends of mine and a big fan. And so just because I happened to be waiting for them to go on, I got to see Brian do it.
Yeah.
And it was exactly as he said.
Yeah.
And the guys like Pete Palladino, who has played Wilkes-Barre many times, but lives out in Long Beach Island now. You know, I was watching Pete, and Pete was like, this is pretty cool. This is pretty cool. Yeah. Like, no one does this.
No.
You know, no one like the
like, I don't get a lot of promoters that come over and are like, let's knock it out of the park today, guys.
Go out there and have a great and so there's some personality to it as well that he brings to that event, which I think makes it work. Other stuff, Mike, that I know you work on.
Because you do too.
Because I'm on a couple of committees with you. So Mike and I are in a lot of meetings together every year, sometimes here at our place, sometimes over at City Hall.
I feel bad for you having to deal with me and all of this.
Sometimes on Zoom calls.
Yeah. Because I'm the same there too as I am here. Don't worry, it's not great.
My favorite is probably the Jazz Committee, because I just love seeing you and John Mayday interact with each other.
Oh, we have so much fun. I love John. John and I've known John for 20-some years. John was one of the first people who recruited me into the Chamber of Commerce at the time when I was running my own traffic business. And it was John and I would always be together. So John I've known for a very long time. And John and I, John's the best because he will roll with anything I say.
I have to tell the audience this: the first time that I realized that you and John had, and I didn't know at the time, it was right here in this room at this table, and it was one of our first Cavalcade of Jazz meetings, and we were talking about getting the event started and getting it off to a good start, and then maybe 5 years down the road we could do this or that once we gained some traction. And John was talking about, well, I think maybe we should do that next year instead. And now John's a little bit older than us. And Mike looks.
Well, John's a little bit older than the actual buildings downtown.
Mike says to John, "You don't want to wait 5 years, John, because you'll be dead by then." And all of us at the table kind of looked at each other like eyebrows raised, like, "Whoa!" And then
John rolled right into it. John was like, "Well, probably not. I mean, how would I be that old then?"
Oh man! But then we realized that this was a thing between the two of you, and that you do it together all the time, and it's a lot of fun. But
that's next year's last stop. Next year's last stop is John and Mike together. Alan won't even be here. We're just gonna put him over in the corner, and we'll just do our own for a while.
Oh, we're not gonna call it last stop. Kyle's not going to allow that. Kyle produces the podcast. He already made the graphic. No, but seriously, Mike, Rockin' the River, the Cavalcade of Jazz, the Babe Ruth event, Babe Ruth Sultan of SWAT, which we started last year with great support from you and the city. These are other events that we work together on as a team, and it's another long day for you. I mean, we were out at the Cavalcade of Jazz that night at the Kirby and bopping around town, and the Babe Ruth event, after everybody's long gone that day, you and I are packing up our cars, and it was a Saturday where we were there, and of course Rockin' the River. You've gone up on stage and represented the city and said some words a few times over the years. So I just really want to thank you for being involved in all these other projects that really benefit the city of Wilkes-Barre and Luzerne County.
Well, and
it's more time off your plate.
It is, but it's yours as well. And I mean, I enjoy working with you because, I said, like, that was one of the reasons why I came in with the mayor is I prefer to have people that I know will do work. Because, you can be like, I know I'll run around and I'll do stuff and I'll take control of a lot of situations because that's just who I am. But when you get people that will do that as well with you, and that person standing next to you when you're doing things, that's so important in all of these things. And I really that's one of the reasons I really appreciate having you with it, because you're right with me every time. And you're jumping right into, oh, okay, yeah, what do you need? This, we'll do this. We're not. No one here is above doing anything. No one's. We're actually below doing most things.
Well, I think maybe it's one thing that we do have in common. Like for Rocking in the River, I'll be there at 8:00 in the morning, and there's a lot of stuff that there's chairs and tables that need to. I'm not good at standing there and watching other men do work.
Yeah,
that's just not my personality. I will grab something and start hauling stuff around.
Yep.
I think that if you're on a team, that's how it should be.
And especially when you're the leader of that team.
Yeah.
Like, people are more willing to do stuff if you're willing to pitch in. If you're the guy that's just standing there going, go over there, go over there, go over there, everyone's like, I hate that guy.
Absolutely can't do that. As long as I'm able, physically to keep doing the heavy lifting or help out with it. And I know you're the same way, and I think that does go a long way with the teams that we're fortunate to work on. The Jazz will be going into our third year next year. It's a big anniversary for the event.
75 years.
And the Babe Ruth is 100 years next year.
Yep.
Although we've got one to do before that in the fall. And this year I'm gonna play this year. Are you gonna play in the game? I didn't want to play in the. Last year the city competed against the county in a home run derby.
You mean beat the pants off of the
right,
county
right.
in the home run derby?
Yes.
The mayor still has an entire trophy for that he
He sleeps with it.
Yeah, he does.
But this year we're going to actually play a 3-inning game, and I didn't want to play in the derby last year because I wasn't sure if I could hit one out anymore, and we were.
He says anymore,
working
like as if he used to just pound dingers.
Once in a while.
He was like Aaron Judge before this.
Once in a while.
Now he's worried.
I was capable. But this year we're going to play a game, and so I'm thinking maybe of playing at least an inning or so. So I hope you do too.
At least an inning. I might try.
We got to.
We'll see.
Give ourselves.
We'll give ourselves that to go out there and do it.
Take one at bat.
Yeah, I mean, well, at least I can field. I don't know. You better put it in my golf swing. That's the only way it's working these days. So.
Mike, outside of work, I know we're going to wrap up soon here because we talked about it a lot.
Because Kyle's getting nervous.
But
over there.
really,
he doesn't imagine everything he's got to edit.
When you have free time, what do you like to do?
I like to golf, and free time is very small. I really enjoy coaching, though. I do enjoy coaching soccer. I do enjoy running that league, which is funny because it's like the same job you're doing here. You're still running events when you're doing that. So I enjoy that. I still enjoy, it's funny because I enjoy sticking my toe still into the radio and still being able to do the sports broadcast. So even though those are jobs and those are things that, you do and you're out there, but, I enjoy doing that stuff and, you get fun. I just went down to Philly with my kids yesterday and we did some history stuff because it's, it's easier to do it at 2:49 than it is to do it at 2:50. So you go to Independence Hall and you go to the Liberty Bell and the American Revolution Museum and that kind of stuff is is fun to me, and I'm not far away from a vacation. Looking forward to that. So
enjoy it.
Yeah,
well deserved.
I need 1 week every 6 months. That's what I gun for.
Mike, we appreciate you spending some time with us today, and thanks again for all that you do for the city and the county and for the people here of northeastern Pennsylvania. If you see this guy running around at an event and you know that it's probably going to go off without a hitch because he's the best.
Well,
thanks,
it's going to look like it's without a hitch. I'm not saying it's without a hitch. There's hitches everywhere.
But the fires will have been put out.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Mike.